Hello there and welcome to my channel Novice Modelling and Midlife Crisis. Today I'm going to do something slightly different. I'm going to discuss with you a plan that I have for a diorama, a kind of diorama that I intend to build at some point in the future, which basically combines two unlikely kits into one scene, I suppose. So I alluded to this in the previous video I did when I was doing a what's in the box for this Hobbyboss 2cm FLAK38 late version SDAH 51, that I was going to make this with this ICM kit number 35531 G4 1939 production Mercedes-Benz staff car. Now the staff car is quite easily identifiable as being the mode of transport preferred by the crazy corporal at the time, and there was actually a number of these built for the entourage and higher ranking members of the party, and basically this was, you know, the favoured vehicle. Now if you actually go onto Wikipedia and type in Mercedes G4, I suppose, you'll find it was only actually 57 of these particular vehicles built. That's mainly because it was a very, very complicated, luxurious and expensive vehicle. It was actually originally intended to be just a general purpose transport for the military, but these things generally don't sort of take that shape, and it was decided to take over by the hierarchy. Now it is actually G4, obviously. There were actually previous iterations of this vehicle, being the G1, the G2 and the G3. And if you actually look into the history of this vehicle, you'll actually find that the G1 was actually just a regular small truck, if you like, that was around about, I think it was around about sort of 3,000 units were produced between the late 1920s and the mid 1930s. I'm going to actually discuss why I've decided to make these two items together, because it's not something that would be at all logical. And it kind of isn't either, because there would be a certain amount of reconstruction required if you were to do it correctly. Unfortunately, I don't possess the skills to do it correctly, so I'm just going to build this model and mate it with that. I'm going to talk to you now about a film called The Captain, or it's a German language film, so obviously it's called The Hauptmann in German. And it's a rather interesting film that I found a couple of years ago. And when I talk to people about what you think the best war film you've seen recently, a lot of people, you know, have never heard of this film. So it kind of like something interesting. It's just a video review, if you like, a film review with some models, because this channel is about models at the end of the day. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read out the Wikipedia blurb about the particular film. So The Captain, 2017, is a international co-produced historical drama film written and directed by Robert Schwentke. It was screened in the special presentation section at the 2017 Toronto International Film Festival. It tells the story of a German war criminal, Willi Herold, who assumed a stolen identity as a German officer and orchestrated the killing of deserters and other prisoners of war at one of the Emslandanger camps. So we'll move on to the plot. In April 1945, during the final weeks of the war, Willi Herold, a young Luftwaffe Fallschirmjäger, or paratrooper, which I'm sure you all know, escapes the pursuit of a roving German military police commando who wishes to execute him for desertion. After his escape, Herold finds an abandoned car containing the uniform of a decorated Luftwaffe captain. Herold takes the uniform and impersonates an officer, taking command of a number of stragglers as he moves through the German countryside, under the guise that he is on a mission, ordered by Hitler himself to assess morale behind the front. Although initially promising the local populace a decrease in looting, Herold becomes increasingly despotic as more disparate troops join his command, named Kampfgruppe Herold. These troops include Freitag, a kind and aging rifleman who is made Herold's driver, and Kopinski, a sadistic drunk. Eventually, the Kampfgruppe find a camp full of deserters awaiting execution, and assumes control over operations there. While in the camp, Herold orders the execution of dozens of prisoners, with Kopinski being the principal executioner, and becomes increasingly infatuated with his newfound power, Over the course of their stay, Freitag becomes suspicious of Harold and realises that the captain's uniform does not belong to him, basically because it doesn't fit him after seeing a tailor shorten the pant legs. Eventually the camp is destroyed by an allied air raid and camp group Harold moves to a local town. While there, the group loots considerably from the local population and sets up a makeshift command post in a hotel under the name Sonderkommando und Schnellgericht, Summary Court Herald. Under this command, Harold orders the execution of Kaplinski. After a night of debauchery, the group's hotel is stormed by military police and Harold is arrested in court. Harold claims that he acted only in the defence of the German people and escapes out a window before being sent back to the front. In the final scene, Harold is seen walking through a forest filled with skeletal remains, and the audience is informed that after the war, he and several of his accomplices were sentenced to death and executed by the Allied forces. The ending credits are accompanied by a sequence of Harold and his group driving through the streets of modern-day Görlitz in their Mercedes-Benz G3. This is a G4. Eventually stopping to accost and harass the local passers-by on foot. So basically, it's a film, and it's loosely based on a true story of this guy who did actually go around and cause a lot of havoc behind the lines, basically for his own benefit, basically. And it is true that basically he was actually sentenced to war crimes after the war finished. The reason why we're putting these two kits together is basically because the car that he finds is actually a G3. Now, the difference between a G3 and a G4, as far as I can find off my basic sort of sniffing around the internet, is the G4 is a more of an upmarket scale car. So basically, it's far more refined. It's got far more luxury recruitments. The G3 is much more sort of square and angle-bodied and has a split screen, and it doesn't have the fancy boot on the back. It is very much more a sort of trunk arrangement. The wheels are lights are obviously slit lights. I doubt very much it's got the Mercedes emblem on the front. It certainly hasn't got any chrome. It is basically painted a sort of full-on dark grey. So the options that I have to do this is just basically to build this as is, because that's what my skill level is at the moment. And then in the future, maybe we'll extend or alter the body on another kit and try to make it more like what is actually depicted in the film. Now, the reason why we pair this with the 2cm FLAK38 is basically after Willy Harold discovers the car which is a Luftwaffe car, which you can actually see on YouTube. There is actually pictures of it driving around, and it is quite a formidable vehicle. He actually finds this car and he accosts Freitag, and then he comes across another 2 or 3 Fallschirmjägers looting a farm, and he joins forces with them, or they join forces with him, because obviously looters and ne'er-do-wells and vagabonds roaming the countryside are currently getting executed. So they kind of figure that if we're hanging around with this guy who's an officer who seems to be a little bit shady, we can probably pass out the final weeks of the war getting fat and getting drunk, basically. A few scenes later, they find another couple of Fallschirmjägers who are towing one of these 2cm FLAK38s by hand. Now, I think the FLAK38 is also quite famous in another film, in Saving Private Ryan, when they're in the town towards the end of the film, and the soldiers are attacked by one of these 20mm or 2 centimeters, and it basically rips bodies to shreds. So there is another scene. Obviously, then they actually mate the 20mm with the G3, and they go about, because obviously now they've got a heavy weapon with them, which is capable of doing an awful lot of damage. They meet up with other spurious members of the Wehrmacht who are trying to avoid getting killed as well, and they kind of join forces with them. And later on, they go to this this camp that's described in that blurb that I've just read to you. And their mode of executing the prisoners is kind of horrific, because they actually use a 20mm on them until they run out of ammunition, and then they just resort to rifles and pistols. So it's quite a horrific film, but it's also, I hate to say it, darkly comedic in just the way that the characters interact with each other and the conversations that they have. It's, I mean, I bought this just by accident. I saw it and I thought, I've never heard of that, I'll buy it, And I kind of like foreign language films anyway. So the fact that it was in German was totally irrelevant to me. But it is almost, it kind of reminded me of a sort of Tarantino-esque film, the way it's just portrayed, and the conversations that they have, and the sort of dark humour that's going on in the background when it's actually covering such horrific actions by these guys who are basically just trying to see out the end of the war and survive, but they just go around causing havoc at the end of the day. It alludes in the blurb that I've just read to the final, the outro, if you like, when the credits are being displayed at the end of the film, where these guys, fully dressed up in their German uniforms, driving around in their G3 in this modern day town of Görlitz, where they actually, you know, get out and they start accosting the local passers-by and trying to loot them, as well as their mobile phones and their designer shades and their funky hats and things like that. It's one of the I've got to say, it's one of the funniest things I've ever seen in a film. It's surreal at the end of the day, and I think the whole film is sort of set in a surreal context. It's outrageous, but the fact that it's based on a, you know, loosely based on a true story makes it even more terrifying, I suppose. The other interesting thing about this particular DVD that I've got, I mean, you can probably get this on, I don't know, on Amazon or YouTube or something like that. This actually comes with colour or black and white versions. And when you watch it in black and white, it brings back the horrifying visual that, you know, you see when the first time you saw Schindler's List, which at the time was like, oh, why are we watching a black and white film? And then you get into what the film is about and you go, yeah, it makes sense as to why we're watching it in black and white now, because it just makes it that much more terrifying at the end of the day. You know, especially in Schindler's List, when you get the little girl in the red coat come across, and it completely throws the visuality of it out the window. And this film, you know, when you watch it in black and white, because I've got the option to do so, it makes it so much more sort of documentary-esque of the time when you watch these black and white things on the TV or, you know, on the internet. So that's why I've decided to, at some point in the future, mate my G4, even though technically it's not the right vehicle. It should be a G3, which is slightly different, like I say, and this 2cm FLAK38, and do it up with the necessary Kampfgruppe Herald markings, which are written in paint, and load it up with any loot that they've got, which, you know, basically, you know, beer and crates and artwork or whatever they could get their hand on them, and bags of Pfennigs. So that's an explanation as to what this was going on in the previous video, and I hope you think it's a reasonably unsensible idea for modelers, because I don't really do things that are standard. I kind of like to think outside of the box, if you like. Think outside of the model box. So that's what I'm going to do at some point in the future. And there we go. So I hope you like this little video on one of my crazy plans that I intend to do with my models, that I have roughly 325 kits going at the moment. I am hoping to do one what's in the box review from now every day until Christmas. So I've got plenty of things for you to look at and to try to keep you interested. So please do like and subscribe, and follow me on my model building ride to insanity. Thanks for watching, and be seeing you.